Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the untold numbers listening at home, at work, in their cars, at the gym, and anywhere else people listen to podcasts. From Keene in the Shire, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get hyped for the Penguin Club Podcast.
Oh, we're just getting started, baby. Because I stay hyped!
Welcome to the Penguin Club Podcast. Online at penguinclubpod.com. That does take you to the Patreon, where you can wind up becoming a patron, joining the Penguin Club, because we're just too sweet. Yet, no cease and desist over here. I can still say it. Now, before I get into the preview of TLC, I just want to mention I'm not finished watching, but I did start watching Global Wars Chicago, the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, and there's a really, really interesting spot during an 8-man tag match where the Bullet Club, they're being taunted with the Too Sweet because, well, of course, Bullet Club, Young Bucks specifically wound up getting a cease and desist order from Vince McMahon and WWE, and I talked about that 2 weeks ago on this podcast. But I just thought it was funny that that's now become a taunt against the Young Bucks, and they're doing one sweet, which kind of lame. But I think what I'm going to do, because for patrons, I have said that all patrons get a Too Sweet. Well, if you wind up donating at something higher than that introductory $1 jobber level, let's say you wind up becoming a $5 per episode patron, I'll give you a 5 sweet. You join at the $10 level, you get a 10 sweet. So, whatever dollar amount over $5, at $5 or up, you get that many sweets. So, jobbers, you still get a 2 sweet, even if you only give $1 an episode, you still get a 2 sweet. Everybody else, 5 sweet, 10 sweet, however many sweets, just because I think it's kind of funny that, the 2 sweet has become a taunt of the Bullet Club. Specifically, a taunt of the Young Bucks because, well, they're not allowed to do it because cease and desist. So let's jump into the previews and my predictions of TLC 2017. Now, this is a very, very special episode of TLC because it's the first one not to take place in December. There's also an anniversary with TLC that I'll touch on later on, and there's been questions, and I've got to admit, I'm not the hugest fan of this card. Looking at the card, and let me pull this back up, there's no tables match, there's no ladder match, there's no chairs match, thank God, and there's only one TLC match that does not involve a title. Now, I've been asked, so what's going to happen here? There's nothing hanging above the ring. It's a 5-on-3 handicap match, nothing hanging above the ring. The Miz's IC title's not hanging over the ring. The Shield tag team title's not hanging over the ring. How's this going to work out? Well, it's actually not the first time. Interestingly enough, it's not the first time that a TLC match has not had something hanging over the ring. I'll jump into that a little bit more as well. But let's start off by looking at the pre-show. The pre-show is going to, and I have to admit, I don't watch 205 Live. But I understand that some interesting things are happening on 205 Live. And one of them, Drew Gulak, has been doing a PowerPoint presentation over the last couple of months. And the way it's been described that I've heard it talked about, it seems very entertaining. And during the pre-show that they're now calling the kickoff show, apparently Drew Gulak is going to continue part of his PowerPoint presentation. And one of the slides is apparently no chanting. There's also no flips and no, I forget some of the other things. But apparently it's a very interesting thing. So I'm definitely looking forward to the kickoff show, pre-show PowerPoint presentation from Drew Gulak. And hopefully there's a chant of, "No more chanting! No more chanting! No more chanting!" Just because I love irony. Now, the match on the pre-show, and I've got to say that I'm happy to some degree with how Raw is running their women's division. And I say to some degree because I'm not entirely happy, and apparently one WWE superstar also not happy, if reports are to be believed. The superstar who is not happy is one Nia Jax. Reports are she walked out of the show on Monday because she was not happy. I have not seen updates, giving specific details other than she walked out. And, well, of course, that's the second WWE superstar in 2 weeks to walk out on Monday night. The other being Neville, the former Cruiserweight champion who lost to Enzo Amore, who then wound up proceeding to lose to Kalisto. But Enzo left on the night that Kalisto wound up winning, and apparently, from what I'm hearing, the whole thing of putting the Cruiserweight title on Kalisto was a last-minute decision influenced by Neville's leaving. So the kickoff show, one of 3 women's matches on this card, sees Sasha Banks versus Alicia Fox. And now I'm generally a fan of more Sasha Banks because I know that, they say she's not that nice in person outside of, doing her job as a WWE superstar. But I really like her, specifically her character. And I'm not the hugest fan of Alicia Fox. And I know I'm not alone in saying that, but she just comes off as sort of the creator wrestler version of a wrestler, if that makes sense. Now, anybody that's ever played any of the wrestling games, you probably know what I'm talking about, to where it's just sort of generic wrestler. There's not really anything that distinguishes Alicia Fox from everybody else of wrestler. So this feud, Alicia has wound up tapping out the last couple of times she met Sasha Banks. Alicia needs the win. Sasha could take a loss, although I don't think that, taking a loss to Alicia would wind up, really doing anything for Sasha. It's not going to be like, oh, she lost to Alicia Fox, she can't challenge for the title anytime soon. Well, I don't think Sasha is going to be challenging for the title anytime soon anyway. And that's, again, not any kind of bash on Sasha Banks, because she's a really good performer. She's a really good wrestler. She's good at what she does. But with Asuka coming in, I do think that they're going to wind up setting up Asuka versus whomever for the Women's Championship. Right now, that's Alexa Bliss. We'll talk about that match, her title match, in just a moment. But, yeah, I want Sasha to win. Alicia, I think they might wind up having her win in some kind of, tricky sort of way. but I'm not going to bet on it. And my money here goes Sasha Banks with the win. And again, that's the pre-show match, or the kickoff show match. Next on the list here, and I've sort of taken the order that WWE had and flipped it upside down because I think The Shield versus Braun Strowman, The Miz, Kane, Cesaro, and Sheamus is going to wind up being the main event because, well, the only two title matches are the Cruiserweight title and the women's title. Yeah, that's right. The Universal title not being defended on this pay-per-view. The tag team titles not being defended on this pay-per-view. The Intercontinental title not being defended on this pay-per-view. But there are two Cruiserweight matches, the first of which is a tag team match with Cedric Alexander and Rich Swann versus Gentleman Jack Gallagher and the Brian Kendrick. And Gallagher recently turned heel, joining fellow heel the Brian Kendrick. Alexander and Swann, of course, being the baby faces here. I actually, believe it or not, and I know I've not talked highly about the Cruiserweight. Generally, Cruiserweights come on Monday Night Raw. Oh, this is time for me to go do something else. I'm actually interested in this match, not so much the Enzo Kalisto match, but I do want to see this match, and I'm predicting Gallagher and Kendrick, and partly because I just love seeing somebody wrestle in a suit and do so very well, which is what Gentleman Jack has been doing. Now, speaking of the Cruiserweights, next match, Kalisto v. Enzo Amore for the aforementioned Cruiserweight Championship. Now, this is a match that should definitely be a ladder match. WWE has not announced this as a ladder match, but this should be a ladder match. If I were booking TLC, this would be a ladder match. But I'm not booking TLC. I'm not working for the WWE. And again, I'm not really that invested. Enzo has partnered up with some heels in the Cruiserweight division. And there's definitely going to be not a clean finish here. There's definitely going to be some attempted interference. Don't know whether that interference will actually happen or not. I want Kalisto to win. Basically, I just don't want Enzo to wind up being the champion. So what I'm going to say, because I do think that there's going to be some interference, I'm not going to necessarily say that Kalisto wins the match, but Kalisto retains the title over Enzo Amore. Now, next we're going to look at the second of three women's matches. And, I am so excited for this match. I am so excited for this next match. No. Not the women's championship match, because I'm super excited for that one as well. Because, what was it, like 8 years ago, Mickie James had a title match at TLC that she did not win. And again, I'll talk about that match in just a moment. But the undefeated Asuka versus Emma. And they do have some history in NXT. Obviously, any history that Asuka has with anybody on the main roster is going to have been from NXT. And if you're not familiar with Asuka, she was undefeated. The only reason she is not still the NXT Women's Champion is she legit, broke a collarbone, I think was what they said, at the last NXT TakeOver. And she broke it fairly early in the match. but still went on to have a hell of a match against Ember Moon. And one thing that doesn't make sense to me, and I've heard other podcasts mention this as well, is that everybody in the women's division on Raw was saying, I want to be the first to fight Asuka. Why? I don't want to fight Asuka. Because Asuka could legit kick my head off. I don't want to get in the ring with that woman. And you may remember when I was doing the predictions for No Mercy, and I was doing a little bit of fantasy booking, I fantasy booked at the time having Alexa lose the title to Nia Jax and then begging for a rematch and not getting the rematch, Asuka coming up, getting a title shot right off the bat, winning the title, and then Alexa Bliss being scared to have a rematch and challenge Asuka because Asuka's just that freaking amazing to where, she comes off as she could legit kill you. And people should be scared of Asuka. Instead, everybody's, lining up. And I think part of it is sort of the opposite of the Goldberg Effect. Now, what I mean by that, remember back 20-some-odd years ago when Goldberg was running through everybody and, who's next? Nobody really wanted to face him, even though they could have gone down in history as the first person to defeat. Now, I think what WWE is doing with this storyline is people lining up saying, I want to be the first person to knock down Asuka. Yeah, sure, she's undefeated in the minor leagues. She's undefeated in developmental. Wait until she gets up here with the big girls, and we're going to take her down. So I can, on the one hand, understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, it does sort of lessen the mystique of Asuka, of she's this unstoppable, undefeated person who can legit kick your head off. Asuka is definitely going to wind up winning here unless there's some kind of weird, tricky finish. I hope Asuka does not squash Emma, but at the same time, they should not let Emma look too strong because, again, if you do that, that sort of takes away some of the mystique and appeal of Asuka. Next match, Raw Women's Championship match. And I do think if Asuka beats Emma, I do think that Asuka winds up getting a title shot at the next pay-per-view, which I believe is going to be Survivor Series. And, well, that's coming up in about a month, so there will be a period without a show, although I think I might wind up doing a show halfway between now and then, not really sure. But Alexa Bliss versus Mickie James. And again, Mickie James 8 years ago had a title match at TLC, which she lost. And if you remember, this past Monday, Alexa wound up losing to Mickie. And based on, the way WWE generally winds up booking, whoever looks strong at the go-home show winds up losing at the pay-per-view. So I do think Alexa will wind up losing, or retaining. Mickie James will wind up losing here, and Alexa will go on to face Asuka at the next pay-per-view. And again, maybe I'm just, doing some fantasy booking. Actually, I know I am, because I would love to see that match. Just because I love watching Alexa, because she's, that little 5 feet of fury and, power packed into a tiny little package. So definitely looking forward to both of those matches. And again, Asuka needs to win, and Asuka needs to get a title match ASAP. But don't give it away on Raw, WWE. As much as I like seeing title changes on Raw, there's a reason you have pay-per-views. You save pay-per-view matches for pay-per-views. Next is it's a match Yeah, it's a match. I was listening to Going in Raw with Steven Larson, and they have a very interesting take on this particular storyline involving who WWE is promoting as the Demon versus Sister Abigail. It's Finn Balor versus Bray Wyatt. That's what it is. It's Finn Balor with orange and black pumpkin face paint versus Bray Wyatt with a doily on his head and some voice modulation to make it sound like he's talking like a woman. Now, some of the vignettes and promos that they've had, somewhat entertaining, to where apparently Bray Wyatt is now actually possessed, storyline, possessed by Sister Abigail, who we're still not entirely positive. Was that actually his sister? Was it just some woman? Like, was she a nun? Was she, some kind of, what exactly was Sister Abigail, a voodoo witch? We don't really know who Sister Abigail was. All we know is she never lied to me, Finn. She never lied to me. And then, weird camera effects, and then he's got a doily on his head, and he's talking with a high-pitched, echoey voice. And then Finn Balor, who deserves so much better than this. By the way, have you noticed he still never got his Universal title rematch? Finn Balor, the guy that was the very first Universal champion, and only had to give it up because he, wound up dislocating a shoulder. He never got his rematch. Now, hopefully, Finn Balor winds up winning this, moves on to something else so that he can then, at an upcoming pay-per-view, and it's not going to be Survivor Series, because Survivor Series is going to be Brock Lesnar ripping and suplexing the head off of Jinder Mahal. May he rest in peace. Yes, I know Jinder's not actually dead, but Brock, again, like Asuka, could legit rip somebody's head off. So again, hopefully Finn Balor does move on, and maybe Night of Champion, Clash of Knights, whatever the hell they're calling that pay-per-view that they couldn't remember the name of last year. Hopefully Finn Balor winds up getting that title match, and let him win, please. Don't let Finn Balor wind up getting destroyed in 2 minutes. And that, again, whenever he does ultimately wind up getting that Universal title match. This match, it's going to go on a little too long. There's probably going to be some weird camera tricks. Maybe Bo Dallas shows up also wearing a doily on his head. Because if you're not familiar, Bo Dallas is the real-life brother of Bray Wyatt. And both of them been not in the arenas the last couple of weeks. So, who really knows what's going on? But prediction here, Finn Balor. And finally, The Shield in that 5-on-3 handicap match against Braun Strowman, The Miz, Kane, Cesaro, and Sheamus. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Kane's back. Not really sure why, but it was, oh man, did I pop when Kane ripped through the ring. His music hit, and it's like, that can't be, no, what? And then rips through the ring. Kane's hair inside the steel cage. That's why he ripped through the ring instead of just coming down. Rips through the ring, destroys Roman. Braun gets the 1, 2, 3, and then The Miz winds up getting a 5-on-3 handicap match. And, of course, that's because Dean Ambrose, who I am a huge fan of, decided to run his mouth and say, the Shield's back. We can take on 3, 4, 5, 6. Hell, we'll take on the entire locker room. And The Miz, oh, you think you can take on more than 3 people? All right. Hey, Kurt Angle. Dean Ambrose says that they can take on more than 3 people. And, Well, what are your three I's there, Kurt? Intensity, integrity, intelligence. Have some integrity and, put Dean Ambrose and his brothers up against me and Sheamus and Cesaro and a fourth guy. All right, who's the fourth guy? And then Braun, about 5 seconds too late, kicks the door in because there was a really long, awkward pause there. Kicks the door in, comes in, huffs and puffs, and just looks like I'm going to blow your house down. And Kurt says, yeah, okay, 3 on 4. And then The Miz, this past Monday, said, hey, whoa. Dean said they could take on 3, 4, 5, 6 whole locker room, blah, blah, blah. I want a fifth guy. And, all right, you want a fifth guy. Braun's got to win his cage match. Oh, and by the way, everybody's banned from ringside. And they did something really, really good here to where Miz came out sitting at commentary, and commentary no longer ringside. Commentary's up on the stage, and somebody had, what are you doing here? You're banned from ringside. He said, I'm not at ringside. I'm at commentary. Yep. Good point. You're making a really good point here, Miz. You are not at ringside. You're at commentary. And then Braun, goes on to win because Kane returned. Oh, yeah, and Kane's the fifth guy. And Curtis Axel literally got hung out to dry. He was hanging upside down from a forklift after trying to ambush the Shield. Now, the Shield, you may remember, and again, this is a 5-on-3 handicap match, TLC match, nothing hanging over the ring. Much like what happened 5 years ago when the Shield had their debut match at TLC against Team Hell No and Ryback. One of the members of Team Hell No? Yeah, that's right, Kane. So a little bit of nostalgia throwback here to where Kane again fighting against the Shield. And again, what happens in a TLC match where nothing is hanging above the ring? Yeah, that's right. It gets decided by pinfall or submission. Again, this is the fourth time that's ever happened. The other times, that very first one, 5 years ago, where the Shield fought Team Hell No and Ryback. Hell No being, of course, Daniel Bryan and Kane. So it was Daniel Bryan, Kane, Ryback versus the Shield. The next one was the WeLC. That's midget TLC, if you weren't familiar, where El Torito and Hornswoggle had a WeLC match, again decided by pinfall or submission. And then Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt at 2014's TLC had a TLC match where nothing was hanging above the ring. Again, this is a very weird TLC pay-per-view because there is no tables match, there is no ladder match, and there is no chairs match. Also no stairs match. They threw that one in a couple of years ago. But I think they're going to wind up having the Shield stand tall here and defeat that 5-on-3. Would not surprise me at all if The Miz on Sunday shows up to Kurt's office and says, hey, Kurt, Dean said they could take on the entire locker room. I just want one more guy. Give me one more guy, and then it'll be 6-on-3. I don't think they're actually going to change it at the last minute to 6-on-3, but look for that to happen to, create some kind of Miz v. Angle storyline. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, but I could be a lot more excited about this pay-per-view than I really am. And, I was going to go on a rant about why WWE needs to get rid of themed pay-per-views. Maybe I'll do that in 2 weeks between now and Survivor Series. We'll play it by ear. But don't forget, PenguinClubPod.com is where you can become a patron. Also, Go get some merch at merch.penguinclubpod.com. Until next time, goodbye and good night.